They said the house on Morvine Street had no cellar. No records. No blueprints. No foundation. And yet, when Jonah Richter bought the property in the crumbling town of Droswick, the smell of damp stone rose from beneath the floorboards like breath. He didn't come for the town's history. Or the rumors. He came to disappear. A burned-out history professor with no family left and a drinking problem growing roots, Jonah thought Droswick, quiet, fog-choked, and mostly forgotten, would be the perfect place to rot in peace. But peace had long since abandoned Droswick. It began on the fourth night. Rain hammered the tin roof, and the wind screamed like a grieving mother. Jonah was trying to write in his journal, but the pen kept skipping, as if the ink itself didn't want to stay. Then, the knock. 3 slow raps, echoing beneath his feet. Not at the door. From under the floor. Jonah froze. He lived alone. At first, he convinced himself it was old plumbing, an echo, maybe just the foundation settling. But the knock came again the next night. And the next. Always at the same time, 2:13 a.m. Always 3 knocks. And always from below. By the 7th night, sleep was a memory. Jonah's eyes were bloodshot. He had torn up half the floorboards in his living room, expecting to find a crawl space or pipes or even rats. But there was nothing. Just solid wood atop stone. And the smell. Stronger now. Like wet ash. He visited the town clerk the next morning. A woman named Mrs. Danvers, old as the walls and twice as brittle, squinted at him over cracked glasses. "Number 49 Morvine?" she asked. He nodded. She sucked her teeth. "Shouldn't be there." "What do you mean? That house was condemned. Burned out in '62. No one rebuilt. I'm living in it." She frowned. "Then you ain't livin' in a house, Mr. Richter. You're livin' in a memory." Jonah left with more questions than answers and a growing pressure in his chest. That night, he drank a bottle of whiskey and sat by the floorboards with a flashlight and a crowbar. The knocks came right on schedule. 2:13. 3 of them. But this time, something changed. A new sound followed. Dragging. Stone on stone. Something heavy. Something coming closer. He pried loose another plank and felt cold air rush past his face. He leaned down with the flashlight, stomach churning. There was a crack in the stone beneath. Thin, but long. Like the beginning of a fissure. And from within, he swore he saw movement. Not a rat. Not a bug. A finger. Long. Gray. Gently tapping the stone. He fell back, screamed, scrambled to replace the boards. He slept with the lights on, baseball bat clutched to his chest. But morning didn't come the same way anymore. The sky stayed gray. The wind stayed loud. And the smell, now it came from his skin. Jonah tried to leave the house the next morning. He packed his duffel, locked the door behind him, and drove for the highway. But the signs had changed. There was no exit for Droswick, no turn off, no trace of the town at all. Just fog, endless fog. And a looping road that led him, after 6 hours of driving, right back to Morvine Street. His house was waiting. The door was open. Inside, the smell of ash had grown heavier. Now it lingered in his throat like soot. The crowbar lay on the floor where he dropped it. The boards he'd pulled up were perfectly replaced. And the floor? No crack. No sign he had ever pried into it. Just smooth, clean wood. As if the house itself had healed. He started searching online. Any record of the house. The fire from 1962. The town's history. Anything. But every mention of Droswick ended in 1961. Even maps from the late 60s had a blank space where the town should be. He tried to call a friend back in Boston. No signal. His laptop restarted on its own. And when it powered back up, the wallpaper had changed. It was now a grainy photo of his basement floor, taken from above. But Jonah had never taken that photo. He ran out the door, heart pounding, and made it 3 blocks before collapsing in front of the church, an old Gothic ruin choked in ivy. Inside, he found a priest. Or what passed for one. Father Latham wore black robes and had skin like old wax. His eyes were the only part of him that looked alive, and they were afraid. Jonah told him everything. The knocks. The finger. The crack. The town with no way out. Latham didn't interrupt. He simply nodded. "You pried open the 13th seal," he said. "I pried open my floor." The priest shook his head. "No, you broke the only thing that kept it asleep." Jonah stared at him. "Kept what asleep?" Father Latham sighed. "The house has always had 12 cellars. Buried beneath each other. Stacked like coffins. Each one holds a memory. A secret. A sin. But the 13th, it wasn't built. It was found. In 1906, a man dug too deep. The floor cracked. People heard whispers. 13 nights later, the town burned. Everyone who heard the knocking vanished. But they rebuilt, Jonah said. No. The priest looked up. They forgot. That's what the house does. It makes you part of the memory. That night, Jonah returned home and ripped up the floor again. This time, the wood fought back. The nails bent. The boards groaned. But he got through. The crack was larger now. Not a fissure. A seam. And behind it, stone steps descending. Lit by no source of light at all. He didn't want to go down. But his legs moved anyway. 1 step. 2. 13. 13 more. Until he found the door. And on it, carved deep in old wood, was a name. Jonah Richter. But that was impossible. He'd never been here before. Had he? Jonah stared at the door. His name, his full name, wasn't just scratched or scribbled. It was carved into the wood like a birthright. Old, splintered, deep. As if it had been there for 100 years. He reached out to touch it. And the door opened by itself. Inside was a narrow corridor of black stone, walls sweating, ceiling low. It pulsed with a sick rhythm, like something breathing just beneath the surface. As Jonah stepped inside, he realized something horrifying. There was no light, yet he could still see. The hallway led to a wide chamber. Low-ceilinged, domed. The walls were lined with mirrors, 12 of them, set equidistant, each with its own iron frame scorched at the base. But they reflected nothing. In the center of the chamber was a chair. An old, splintered thing. Facing the 13th mirror. And on the seat, a coat. A journal. His coat. His journal. But he'd left both upstairs. He approached, trembling, and picked up the journal. The handwriting was his. The entries were not. Day 2. Knocking came again. I didn't answer this time. It was louder. Day 5. I saw her in the mirror. She didn't blink. I don't think she can anymore. Day 9. I forgot my own name today. The cellar whispered something else to me. Something older. Day 13. If someone finds this, don't speak to the girl. She's not real. She's what it wears to get close. Jonah dropped the journal, breath ragged. The mirror in front of him, the 13th mirror, was now glowing faintly. And there was a shape inside. A girl, maybe 8 years old, pale, hair like soaked thread, wearing a nightgown streaked with blackened handprints. She was looking straight at him. But she wasn't reflected. She was behind the glass. She raised her hand. Jonah stepped back. Then she smiled, and it was wrong. Too many teeth. Too much darkness between them. He ran, up the stone stairs, through the door, slamming the boards back over the hole. But the smell followed him. So did the whispering. That night, he dreamed of 12 chairs in a circle. All empty. Except for the last one. Where he sat, smiling, bleeding, waiting. When he woke, he was sitting in his living room. Still dressed. Still holding the journal. But something was different. The photos on the wall were changed. His mother's face had no eyes. His diploma had different handwriting. And where the family clock once hung, was the 13th mirror. He screamed, but no sound came out. Only a knock behind him. 3 times. Then her voice. You see now. Jonah didn't turn around. He couldn't. His muscles locked, frozen in terror. The 13th mirror hummed behind him, vibrating with invisible tension. The voice still echoed in his mind, childlike, sing-song, and awfully familiar. Not just familiar. Identical. To his own. He forced himself to move, inch by inch, until he could face the sound. There was no one behind him. Just his kitchen, and the open door leading down to the basement, though he'd sealed it shut the night before. The next few hours bled together in pieces. He tried to call for help. His phone had no signal. He tried to leave. His front door opened only to reveal the same hallway, over and over. He marked the wall with a knife. 5 loops later, the same mark greeted him like a grim handshake. When the sun, or what passed for it, set, Jonah felt it before he saw it. A shift in the house. The mirrors began whispering, not with sound, but with thought. Flickers of memory, regrets, words from mouths long dead. He passed the first mirror in the hallway, and saw his brother, drowning in the lake they used to swim in as children. But his brother had died in a hospital. The second mirror showed his ex-girlfriend, Elise, staring blankly while blood poured from her ears. She was alive. She had to be. He'd only left Boston 2 months ago. Right? In the third mirror, Jonah saw himself. Not present-day Jonah, but a twisted version. Grinning, filthy, skin cracked, eyes glowing like something that hadn't seen daylight in centuries. The thing raised a hand in the reflection, and Jonah's hand moved with it, against his will. He stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. The mirror cracked. The image shattered, but not before the reflection whispered, "We've missed you." Jonah didn't sleep that night. The lights flickered. The walls breathed. Something scratched beneath the floor, like claws on slate. And then, footsteps. Small, bare, running across the ceiling. A child's laughter trailed behind them. By morning, he was a ghost of himself. Unshaven, rattled, starving, but unable to keep food down. He tried to write everything in the journal. But every time he looked away, the entries changed. "Welcome home, Jonah. We're still waiting. Don't forget the 13th name." That last line repeated across 24 pages. He ripped out the pages and threw them into the fire. They didn't burn. They simply curled and began whispering. He took the journal outside, trying to bury it behind the old shed. But the backyard was gone. Only the cellar door waited there now, standing upright, as if it had moved, waiting for him. That night, someone knocked at the window. Jonah opened the curtain, and saw himself staring back. The reflection stood on the other side of the glass. Same face, same eyes, but this Jonah was wrong. His skin looked drained, bluish beneath the eyes. His jaw was slack, and his lips peeled back in a grotesque smile. And then it raised a hand, and tapped the glass. Knock, knock, knock. Jonah stepped back. The air in the room dropped like a stone. Frost blossomed across the windowpane. The other him kept smiling, and then mouthed a word. "Open." Jonah screamed and threw a chair at the window. The glass didn't break. It rippled, like water, like a mirror. He ran to the basement door. It had been sealed again, but not with nails. With roots, dark tendrils of wet wood and something like flesh, pulsating faintly. Something inside him whispered, "Go down. You have to go down." But he didn't. He locked himself in the bedroom and waited for sunrise. He dreamed of the 13th cellar again. But this time, it wasn't just the mirrors. There were people there. 12 figures. Seated in silence around a great black pit. Faceless. Still. In the 13th chair sat the girl with the pale eyes. She stared directly at him and said, "One must remember, or the rest forget." When he tried to speak, blood poured from his mouth. He woke choking. That morning, Jonah found the cellar door wide open. The boards gone. The roots receded. No sound from below. No light. Just the yawning dark. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He descended. The steps were damp, cold, countless. The deeper he went, the more he forgot. He knew this was wrong, but didn't remember why. When he finally reached the bottom, the stone hallway was different. The mirrors were broken, shattered. The walls cracked with vein-like fractures glowing faintly red. There was no journal on the chair this time. Only a name burned into the stone below it. Jonah Richter, memory keeper. The chair faced the 13th mirror again, but this time, the mirror was missing. And beyond it, a door, wide open. Beyond the door, a chamber of flesh. The walls pulsed. Teeth protruded from the stone. Bones fused with brick. Shapes moved behind translucent membranes, like things waiting to be born. Jonah stepped inside. He couldn't help it. A low hum started. Familiar. Ancient. It was a voice, but also a feeling. Like being whispered to in a language that existed before sound. He heard, "You broke the seal. You wore the name. You must take your place." Then, footsteps. Behind him. He turned and saw the girl, smiling, empty-eyed. She held out her hand. "It's time." Jonah didn't take her hand. Couldn't. He stood frozen as the chamber pulsed, fleshy walls breathing like lungs, echoing with quiet moans of things unseen. The girl's pale eyes bore into his, ancient and knowing. "Not a child. Not anymore. You were chosen," she said. "You walked backward through memory. You left your shadow behind." Jonah backed away, heart pounding. "What are you?" She tilted her head. "The 13th. The last. The door." The moment she spoke those words, the ground beneath Jonah's feet cracked open, and he fell. Down, down, through a tunnel slick with roots and cold breath and things that moved just out of sight. He landed in a library. Not a normal one. The shelves were carved from bone. The books were bound in stitched leather, some still writhing, whispering secrets from closed pages. And standing among them were the other 11. Faceless. They turned as one. Each figure carried a book. All the books bore one name. Jonah Richter. Each was dated differently. One said 1841. One said 1932. Another said 2025. Jonah stepped closer and opened the nearest one. Inside, his thoughts, his fears, his memories, his life, recorded with inhuman detail. Even things he'd forgotten, things he'd never told anyone. I stole from Elise. I lied about the accident. I left the boy to drown. Jonah slammed the book shut. The faceless ones watched him. Then, as one, they bowed. The girl appeared again, now wearing a long black robe that trailed into nothingness. "This is your burden, Jonah Richter," she said. "You are the 13th memory. When you forget, others awaken. When you remember, they return to sleep. You are the lock, the anchor, the watcher." Jonah shook his head. "I never agreed to this. You were born knowing. You crossed the threshold. You saw your name. That was enough." The girl stepped forward and placed a key in Jonah's palm. It burned. His veins lit with red light. His eyes rolled back. He saw it all. Past versions of himself. Across centuries. In a village choked by fog. In a hospital with missing walls. In a church with no God. Always descending stairs. Always chasing the 13th. Each time, he became the keeper. Each time, he forgot again, until something woke him. A word. A symbol. A mirror. He fell to his knees, weeping. "I don't want this." The girl touched his head. "You don't have to want. You only have to hold." When he awoke, he was sitting in the chair. Back in the cellar. Alone. But the mirrors were whole again. And now, they reflected something new. Not just faces. Moments. Each showed someone standing above a cellar door. Each looking down. Each ready to descend. And one of them was you. Jonah couldn't tear his eyes from the mirrors. Each one flickered with scenes he didn't recognize, but felt deeply, terribly connected to. A boy in a 1920s newscap, clutching a lantern, stepping into a root-choked staircase. A woman with bandaged eyes unlocking a cellar door in the ruins of a burnt-out church. A soldier during some nameless war, descending into a trench that twisted downward too far. And then, you. Not metaphorically. You, the observer. Jonah saw someone looking through a screen. A modern room behind you. Lit by artificial light. Watching. And the reflection in that mirror. It turned its head and smiled back at him. Jonah recoiled, the chair scraping against the stone floor. "You're showing me things I can't stop," he whispered. "Is this the punishment? The forgetting?" The girl stood behind him now, no longer a child. Her robe shimmered like oil over water, subtly shifting with faces in the folds. Faces Jonah swore he knew, though he couldn't name them. "You are the witness now," she said. "The anchor. All who remember must watch." The walls of the cellar began to bleed. Not with blood. With light. Golden veins cracked through the stone, revealing a honeycomb of endless doors. Each one marked by a name Jonah almost remembered. He stepped toward one, compelled. It opened. A scream poured out like smoke. He saw a mother trying to close a basement door as something behind it clawed for her newborn. A man digging frantically beneath his floorboards, convinced his wife had been buried alive. A woman scribbling the same symbol over and over into her mirror. 2 circles and a flame, until her fingers bled and the glass melted into flesh. Jonah stepped back. The door slammed shut on its own. "You said I'm the anchor," he said through clenched teeth. "But what if I break the chain?" The girl didn't answer. She simply held out the journal again. He took it reluctantly, flipping to the latest page. "To forget is a mercy. To watch is a curse. To act is blasphemy." Underneath. One fresh line in his handwriting. "Someone else is watching now." He dropped the book. The cellar rumbled. The mirrors began to turn inward, reflecting deeper versions of themselves. An infinite recursion of terror. And at the core of the 13th mirror, a door, wide open. From behind it came a sound Jonah hadn't heard since childhood. His mother's voice. Soft, warm, calling his name. "Jonah, come down. I need you." His eyes filled with tears. He walked forward, but before his foot crossed the threshold, he turned one last time. And whispered, "Don't follow me." There was no gravity beyond the 13th mirror. Jonah drifted through darkness that felt liquid. Sounds echoed before they were made. Time unraveled. His thoughts bled into the air like smoke, each memory a flickering light swallowed by a great unseen maw. The chamber he entered was spherical. The walls pulsed like a heart, slick and raw. Embedded in the walls were dozens of doors, but these were unlike any before. They were made of skin. Some had mouths. Others had eyes. One shivered as Jonah passed, whispering the name he didn't remember as his own. He floated toward the center, where the air thickened. And then, without warning, gravity returned. He fell. He landed on something soft. Breathing. It took him a full minute to realize he was standing on bodies. Layer upon layer of them, stretched and woven together. Faces stared upward with open eyes, unmoving, unblinking. He wanted to scream, but the sound caught in his throat. At the center of the room was a well. Not of water. It throbbed with light that wasn't light. Something darker, hungrier. A pull, magnetic and ancient, clawed at his mind. He heard a voice behind him. You made it farther than most. Jonah turned. A man stood there, or what had once been a man. His body was a patchwork of scars and ritual markings. His eyes were completely black. His mouth had been sewn shut, yet the voice came clear. I was the sixth. I tried to refuse. I tried to warn the others. Jonah asked, barely able to speak. What is this place? The man touched the well. His fingers sank into the light. The womb of remembering. The heart of the house. The wound beneath the world. Suddenly, the doors on the wall opened. One by one. From each stepped a version of Jonah. One wearing military rags. One in priest's robes. One bound in chains, eyes hollow. Each had lived a different life. Each had made it here. And each stared at Jonah with the same exhausted eyes. They spoke in unison. It never ends. You forget. You return. You remember. You descend. Jonah fell to his knees. The stitched-mouthed man crouched beside him. Only one way to sever the loop. He handed Jonah a blade. Made of mirror. Its edge shimmered with trapped images, screams, faces, fire, falling. You must cut your name out. Jonah stared at the blade. Could he do it? Did he even remember what his name was? Then the ground shook. Something was waking. Beneath the well. Behind the mirrors. Beyond the 13th. The blade trembled in Jonah's hands. It was cold, not with temperature, but with memory. Every vibration echoed a scream, not all of them human. He raised it to his chest, unsure where to begin. What did it mean to cut out a name? Would it mean death? Oblivion? Escape? But before the blade could touch skin, one of the other Jonahs, the one in chains, spoke. Don't. It only delays it. I tried. His voice was hoarse, haunted. His wrists were flayed where the shackles bit. Another Jonah stepped forward, the one in the priest's robes. He must choose where to be erased. The wound must match the truth. What truth? Jonah demanded. They all pointed to the well. And suddenly, the well moved. Not the structure, but what lay beneath it. A long, slow breath rose from its depths. The entire floor of bodies shivered in response. Jonah turned to the stitched-mouthed man. What is that thing? The man answered without speaking, his sewn lips bleeding slightly as the voice filled Jonah's mind. It is the first name. The one who remembers everything. Before language. Before thought. Jonah stumbled back. Why show me all this? Why me? The priest Jonah answered. Because we've all tried. And we all failed. But you still believe you're real. A sound began to rise. A chant. Low. Hollow. The voices of the doors, the mouths in the walls, the dead beneath his feet. Say it. Say it. Say it. Jonah screamed, say what? And in that instant, he remembered. His real name. Not Jonah. A different one. Buried beneath a lifetime of forgetting. A name whispered to him by the trees when he was a boy. A name etched into the cellar wall beneath his grandfather's house. He gasped. The mirror blade flashed. And without hesitation, he cut. It wasn't his body that bled. It was the world. The chamber cracked. The walls tore open, and behind them was nothing. A howling dark that swallowed light, time, sound. The alternate Jonahs collapsed into ash. The stitched-mouthed man screamed without sound and vanished into threads of memory. Jonah stood alone. His chest now bore a jagged void, an open wound where his name once sat. But for the first time, he felt free, until the voice returned. You cut the name, but not the purpose. The well exploded in light. A figure rose, tall, faceless, its body stitched from old memories, stitched from every Jonah who had come before. Now you must carry us all. Jonah tried to step back, but his legs wouldn't move. The floor beneath him was no longer made of bodies, it was him. His memories, his past lives, his regrets, they writhed beneath his feet, tethering him to the chamber like roots to soil. The stitched figure from the well, tall, spectral, with hundreds of faces stitched into its form, began to merge with the air. Each face opened its mouth, not to speak, but to exhale a memory. One by one, Jonah relived them. A child hiding beneath the staircase, clutching a book that screamed when opened. A soldier dragging his broken leg through a crimson field, hunted by things that wore the dead. A priest burning pages of scripture rewritten in black ink that moved. A man watching himself age in the mirror, 1 year every second. They crashed through his mind like glass. He fell to his knees, convulsing. The chamber responded. The skin doors closed. The light from the well dimmed. All went silent, except for the stitched figure's voice, which came from every direction. You are the 13th vessel. We remember what you've tried to forget. Now, you must carry us out. Jonah screamed, I don't want this. I didn't choose this. But he knew that wasn't true. He'd come here chasing answers. Digging into folklore. Touching cursed wood. Reading words scratched into stone in forgotten languages. He'd invited the descent. From the ceiling above, a chain dropped. Not metal, but bone. It curled around Jonah's wrist like a serpent and pulled. With a sound like tearing fabric, he was yanked upward, through the chamber, through the stone, through the mirrors. He passed through each layer he had crossed before, now in reverse. The obsidian library, aflame. The room of whispering wax figures, melting. The staircase of salt, now crumbling. Finally, he shot through the cellar of the house, shattering the mirror on the 13th wall. He landed on the floor of the old home. Dust, silence, normality. Jonah gasped. He was back, but the house was different. The air felt hollow, like the house had been waiting, holding its breath. He looked at the mirror shards scattered around him. Each shard reflected a different version of himself. And each one spoke, simultaneously. You brought it with you. From the ceiling above, footsteps. Not his own. Heavy. Measured. Coming down the stairs. The door creaked open, and something began to descend into the cellar. The footsteps on the stairs weren't rushed. They were deliberate. Measured. Each one struck like a bell tolling in a cathedral of rot. Jonah pressed his back against the crumbling cellar wall, staring at the wooden door at the top of the stairs. The air pulsed, thick with something old. Dust danced upward, not down. The chain still clung to his wrist, bone, warm, alive. It twitched as if it too feared what approached. Thump, thump, thump. The doorknob turned. Jonah's breath caught in his throat. But the door didn't open. Instead, it sank into the wall, vanishing like wax beneath a flame. In its place was a mirror, unbroken, framed in thorns, and not reflecting him. What it showed was a room, familiar and not a child's room, his old bedroom. The mobile of stars still hung from the ceiling. The torn teddy bear still sat limbless on the dresser. And in the bed, something slept beneath the covers. Jonah stepped toward the mirror, mesmerized. He placed his hand on the glass. And was pulled through. He stumbled onto the floor of the mirrored room. The air was cold. The mobile spun gently though there was no breeze. He approached the bed. The shape beneath the covers didn't stir. But he could hear breathing, slow, wet, unnatural. He peeled the covers back. And screamed. Beneath the sheets was himself. Not as a child, but as something else. His face pale, stretched, his mouth sewn shut just like the stitched man. His eyes were open, and watching. The stitched Jonah blinked once. And then began to rise. Jonah stumbled backward. The mobile above began spinning wildly, ringing like chimes in a hurricane. From the corners of the room, other children emerged. Each with his face, each with hollow eyes, each dragging something behind them. Ropes, books, cages of bone. They circled him. One whispered, "You woke the wrong memory." Another, "Now we are what remains." The stitched Jonah took a step forward, raising a hand. From his palm grew a mirror, not to reflect, but to consume. Jonah turned and ran. Through the door. Into the hallway. But the hallway was no longer his home. It was the house beneath. The one he had fled. Now it had grown. Endless rooms. Shifting walls. The wallpaper was stitched skin. The doors pulsed like wounds. Behind him, the stitched children crawled from the walls, whispering, "Forget again. Sleep again. Let us wear you." Jonah ran blindly, and then he found the old wooden door. The original cellar door. He threw it open. Darkness inside, but something called to him. A voice, gentle, echoing from some forgotten cradle of reality. "There's one more descent left. Jonah hesitated at the threshold of the old cellar door. It no longer looked like wood, it shimmered, oily, as if made from the breath of dying stars. The frame whispered to him in a dozen forgotten tongues, none of which he remembered learning yet all of which he understood. Behind him, the stitched children clawed at the walls, unable to follow. The house seemed to hold them back, for now. One more descent. He stepped through. The world fell away. No gravity. No sound. Just thought. He floated in a corridor of suspended moments, like glass bubbles, each showing a different version of himself making a different choice. In one, he never opened the cellar door. In another, he burned the mirror. In another still, he became the stitched man. He drifted past them, until he reached a still place. A white void. And in the center, a cradle. Empty. Except, not. As he approached, he saw that the cradle held a mirror. Just one. Smooth, perfect, untouched. And it reflected nothing. Not even him. He touched it. The world cracked. He stood in a field. Real, for the first time in what felt like lifetimes. It was dawn. Grass rustled underfoot. The sky was a pale orange, and in the distance stood the house, but whole, new. Not abandoned. A woman stood on the porch. She waved. Jonah's legs moved on their own. As he approached, he began to remember. Not visions. Not lives. But truth. She was his mother. This was his childhood home. This was before he found the cellar. Before the mirror. Before the words scratched into the foundation. Before the forgetting. He was just a child again. She smiled. Come inside, Jonah. Breakfast is ready. He stepped forward. Paused. Looked back. The sky above the house flickered. The trees froze. The birds stopped midair. The world was a cage. A kindness offered to contain him. He whispered, "This isn't real." His mother tilted her head. Her eyes were glass. But it could be. If you just sleep again. He shook his head. No more forgetting. He turned, and found the mirror in his hands. The one from the cradle. No reflection. Just possibility. He raised it, and shattered it against the ground. The sky turned black. The house screamed. The world buckled. And Jonah fell one final time. He landed in the true cellar. Not a dream. Not a mirror. Not a past life. Dust choked the air. The boards above groaned. And in the center, the 13th mirror stood. Framed in bone. Cracked, but still whole. This time, it reflected him. Just him. Not a priest. Not a child. Not a stitched thing. Just Jonah. And on the wall, above the mirror, carved by his own hand. Remember who you are. The mirror pulsed softly, its fractured surface humming like breath. Jonah stepped closer. His reflection stared back. Not twisted or warped, but real. His eyes, his face, his scars. Everything he'd been avoiding. Everything he'd forgotten. The cellar was silent, save for the low vibration of the mirror and the faint echo of his heartbeat in the beams above. Then, a whisper. The loop ends where you choose. He turned. The stitched man was there again, but distant, his edges fraying like smoke in a breeze. His sewn mouth no longer moved, yet his words vibrated in the marrow of Jonah's bones. You've carried it long enough. In his hand was the blade. The same blade as before. The mirror knife. But this time, it felt different. It no longer shimmered with trapped screams. Instead, it held only one reflection, his own. Jonah took it. He looked again at the inscription carved above the mirror. Remember who you are. He raised the blade, and drove it into the wall beneath the words. The blade sank like it was piercing flesh. The mirror screamed. Not a shatter. A voice. A howling, infinite voice that had forgotten language and remembered only pain. The cellar walls trembled. The floor cracked. Dust spiraled upward like smoke. And from the mirror, they came. All the other selves. The priest. The chained man. The soldier. The child. Each stepped from the mirror, surrounding Jonah. Each held a mirror knife. Each one bowed. You remembered. Now we can let go. Jonah looked at them, at himself. He nodded. They raised their blades. And in one motion, they severed the loop. Light. Painful, pure, overwhelming light. Then, silence. Then, breath. Jonah opened his eyes. He was in the real cellar. The modern one. Dusty. Empty. The mirror was gone. So was the blade. Only the inscription remained on the wall. Remember who you are. He rose, trembling, and climbed the stairs. At the top, the door opened easily. The house was alive again, not haunted, not cursed. Just a house. The sun poured through the windows. Outside, the world waited. He stepped out. And for the first time in countless lifetimes, he didn't look back. The sun was blinding after the long descent. Jonah stood on the crumbling porch of the house, now more ruined than memory. The paint peeled in long strips, vines clung to the siding, but something had changed. It no longer watched him. He stepped down onto the dirt path. The grass bowed gently in the breeze, not from fear, but relief. The weight was gone, not just from the house, but from the world. And from him. As he walked down the long gravel road, the voices in his head began to dim. All the versions of himself, all the loops, all the unlived lives, they grew quiet. One by one, they faded. Until only one voice remained. His own. He passed landmarks he had forgotten, an old well, a rusted gate, the tree with initials carved in its bark. Echoes stirred in his chest, but did not overwhelm him. They were no longer possessions. They were remembrances. He reached the end of the road where the woods began. And there, beneath the old birch tree where he once made the choice to return, sat the final mirror. Small, unbroken, set into the earth like a headstone. He crouched beside it, studying his reflection. Still him, still whole, but older now, wiser, weathered by things no human should endure. And yet, he smiled, not because it was over, but because he had finally chosen. He picked up the mirror. It no longer shimmered with potential. It simply showed the present. He turned it over. There, scratched in shaky lines, were 5 words. You are no longer many. He placed the mirror in his coat pocket. Not to carry the burden, but to remember the lesson. And then Jonah walked into the woods. Toward the world. Toward life. No chains. No doors. No mirrors. Only forward.